During the span of only a few decades, in the early 6th century before the Common Era, the Jews returning from Persian exile in the wake of the generous edict of the Emperor Cyrus accomplished some remarkable things, including the rebuilding of their holy temple on the ruins of the old and erecting a new set of walls for Jerusalem's protection and defense. A series of later prophets, including Haggai, Zechariah, Joel, and Malachi, encourage them in these formidable tasks, though modern liberal scholars tend to shun them as being too focused on Israel alone and the Jewish particular. Still, the prophets of these days are unsurpassed motivational speakers who focus the people's energy not on Solomon-like grandiosity, but on a national symbol and community center supported by the tithes and voluntary contributions of the local citizenry. When this second temple is finally dedicated in the year 515 BCE, we're told that the old men in the crowd, who actually remember Solomon's temple, weep, inasmuch as this one pales by comparison. But everyone else who had no such memories cheered. It's the backstory in all of this that we need to consider. Somewhere along the line, after the year 538 BCE, comes a prophet named Haggai, who was probably a returnee from Babylon, along with the prophet Zechariah or Zechariah. Aware that no rebuilding had taken place for some 18 years, Haggai issues a profound oracle. Gadol yeh kvod habayit hazeh ha'acharon, min harishon, amar Hashem tzvaot, uv'makom hazeh eten shalom, neum Hashem tzvaot. And he was in fact right, because even though the Second Temple did not compare physically with the grandeur of the first, its place in Jewish society would be infinitely more important. Because without political independence, the only source of Jewish identity would be religion and culture. While earlier prophets had concerned themselves with issues of ethics, morality, and social justice, Haggai is all about the Jewish particular, to the chagrin of many modern critics. It's true that Jewish society of this post-exilic period spawned what religious scholar Karen Armstrong calls an egalitarian and socialist ethic. She notes that the Jewish people would be the first ancient society on earth to create a welfare system that would be the envy of contemporary pagan cultures. But Haggai is instead concerned about ritual observance, including the renewal of animal sacrifice, conveying a priestly perspective of the presence of Yah in Jerusalem. He addresses two officials placed in power by the Persians, the governor Zerubbabel and the high priest Yehoshua or Joshua. He complains, "Ha'et lachem atem lashevet bevatechem sfunim, v'habayit hazeh charev." His method is basically to guilt his people out. "Zaratem harbe v'haveh me'at, achol ve'ein lisav'a, shato ve'ein lishachra, lavosh ve'ein lechom lo, v'hamistaker mistaker el tzror nakuv." The effect is immediate. because in short order, the so-called Second Temple begins to take shape. The prophet declares, Mi bachem hanish'ar asher ra'a et habayit hazeh bichvodo harishon, Uma atem ro'im oto ata, halo kamo ke'ayin be'einechem ve'ata chazak Zerubbabel neum Hashem v'chazak Yehoshua ben Yehotzadak haKohen haGadol v'chazak kol am haaretz neum Hashem v'asru ki ani itchem neum Hashem tzvaot. If the people purify themselves and keep the commandments, prosperity will follow. Yet peace will be preceded by cataclysm, for God will shake both heaven and earth. There's one more promise made to Zerubbabel. Ani mar'ish et hashamayim ve'et haaretz, v'hafachti kisei mamlachot, v'hishmadeti chozek mamlachot hagoyim, Bayom hahu naum Hashem tzvaot. Ekacha Zerubbabel ben Shealtiel avdi naum Hashem. V'samticha kechotam ki vacha bacharti naum Hashem tzvaot. Some see this as a prediction of the downfall of Persia. Haggai may even be identifying Zerubbabel as the anointed one, the Messiah. How many Messiahs have there been in the annals of Jewish history? It appears there have been quite a few. Still others view this as an eschatological foretelling of the end of days. Who's right? There's an issue that deserves a good smoke, don't you think? As for the form and style of the book of Haggai, it falls into what we would call the disputation genre. It includes frequent admonitions to listen up, pay attention, with the frequent repetition of such declarations as, fear not, I am with you, and take courage. Modern critics question whether the second discourse of Haggai may have been displaced due to chronological confusion. In any case, it seems that in the second chapter, verses 15 to 19, there's a genuine turning point from cursing to blessing and to laying the foundation stone of the new temple. The prophet condemns discouragement over the unfair comparison with Solomon's temple and denounces cult practices that have been going on since the original temple's destruction. Politically speaking, this short book is often seen in the tradition of optimistic prophecy associated with the state cult. On that level, it's not very different from the message of Jeremiah's nemesis, Hananiah, with his prophecy of emancipation from the Babylonian Empire. But Haggai stresses that the temple must be rebuilt in order for Yah to manifest glory in the political arena. With a little detective work, it seems clear that there was some kind of messianic movement building in Judea, and that Zerubbabel might have been part of a larger disturbance against Persian rule in that region. We don't know how this budding rebellion panned out, but the Persian Emperor Darius definitely came out on top. That said, we turn to a slightly younger contemporary of Haggai, the prophet Zechariah, who was active from about 520 to 518 BCE, and who shows up at the site of the temple about a month after the first visit of Haggai. Most contemporary scholars only ascribe the first 8 chapters to him, but in them he relates a series of 8 visions and the dialogues with God concerned with the religious purity of the people. They are much more eschatological, that is, concerned with the end of days, than Haggai, and contain a good deal of obscure verse. In his first vision, the prophet sees an angel riding a red horse with red, dappled, and white horses behind him. They've been sent to inspect the earth, finding that the whole world is helpless and subdued. But God will come back to Jerusalem and show mercy on the city. The second vision involves 4 horns cast down by 4 smiths, signifying a series of imperial powers to come: Assyria, Babylonia, Persia, and Media. But it's also possible that the symbolism amounts to an encryption of the suppression of a number of recent revolts, if the theory about Zerubbabel's messianic identification holds water. A third vision focuses on a man with a measuring rod, measuring the city for its future walls. But one day, Jerusalem will have no need of walls. ואני אהיה לה נאום השם, חומת אש סביב, ולכבוד אהיה בתוכה. In the fourth vision, the high priest Joshua is accosted by Satan, but confirmed by God. Zechariah just dismisses any doubts about his fitness. Satan, not a Jewish concept at all, is it? Perhaps the notion of an anti-God figure seeped into Judaism during this era as an import from Zoroastrianism. But the Hebrew word Satan simply means adversary. In this case, an angelic opponent of Joshua. If that's how we understand the word, then we needn't worry about having 2 gods at all. After all, we're talking about monotheism, not dualism. What a relief. We also find allusion to the so-called branch. זה דבר השם אל זרובבל לאמור, לא בחיל ולא בכוח, כי אם ברוחי אמר השם צבאות. מי אתה, הר גדול, לפני זרובבל למישור, והוציא את האבן הראשה, תשועות חן לה. The prophet later declares, הנה איש צמח שמו, ומתחתיו יצמח, ובנה את היכל השם. Zerubbabel is the branch. He is the descendant of David. But if Haggai and Zechariah imagine that the branch will soon become a messianic king, they will be sorely disappointed, since Zerubbabel simply vanishes from the political scene. In his absence, the priesthood will become more important than ever, and the high priest will act as a kind of de facto king. In the fifth vision, we find a golden lampstand and 2 olive trees signifying the temple and the dual rulership of the high priest and civil rulers. The sixth vision depicts a flying scroll and contains a curse on theft and perjury. The seventh vision involves a basket or barrel containing a woman and carried out of Judah by 2 bird-like females. The woman signifies the transgressions of the people. We also find a new literary device, namely a supernatural agent who explains what's happening. The eighth vision describes 4 chariots, symbolizing the spread of divine power over the whole earth. What we notice in these visions is a shift from direct inspiration, as claimed by Israel's earlier prophets, to the prophet providing interpretation of various prophetic symbols. Hercule Poirot here. A literary detective should be aware that some scholars see both Haggai and Zechariah as political realists, trying in their own way to keep hope alive by depicting characters from the present inhabiting the eschatological future. Other critics, starting with the higher criticism of the 19th century, denigrate Zechariah, just as they dismiss Haggai due to their particularism and concern for the Jewish temple. These critics view the Second Temple period as a time of decline in Israelite religion, involving the demise of prophecy and the narrowing of religious concerns to the temple and ritual. But in defense of these so-called minor prophets, it's argued that they are seriously misunderstood due to the assumption that real prophecy ended with the Babylonian exile, and that the post-exilic and so-called minor prophets are in a different category from the real ethical voices and social justice warriors of the past, such as Amos and Isaiah. Early 20th century Jewish scholar Solomon Schechter also fought back, dismissing the so-called higher criticism as higher anti-Semitism. It's argued that such denigration stemming from the higher criticism is largely based on Marxist presuppositions, including those of Max Weber, and a false notion of opposition between priest and prophet. Moreover, a strong argument can be made that in the Jewish mind there is no artificial distinction between morality and ritual. A good detective will, of course, tackle the issue of the portion of the book referred to as Second Zechariah. It is speculated that chapters 9 to 14 were composed by a later editor, commonly dubbed Deutero-Zechariah, dating from 5 to 50 years after 518 BCE, when first Zechariah leaves the scene. Some have dated Deutero-Zechariah even later, to the early to mid 400s BCE. In that case, it's quite possible that Deutero-Zechariah, not Malachi, was the last of the Israelite prophets. Some go as far as to identify a third Zechariah, while others suggest a whole school of Zechariahs. In any case, the oracles in these chapters focus on the restoration of Israel and a very famous passage about a messianic king arriving on a donkey. Gili me'od bat Zion, hari'i bat Yerushalayim, hine malkech yavo lach, tzadik v'noshahu, ani v'rochev al chamor, al-ayir ben atonot. That brings us to the prophet Joel. Here we have a minor but well-known prophet who, it's argued, must have had a close association with the temple cult and priesthood, and whose message and language is characteristic of the exilic Deuteronomists. At the outset of Joel's oracles, we find a terrifying vision of a locust plague invading the land like an army. Is there an actual plague in progress, or is this an allegory regarding the Babylonian invasion of the 500s BCE? It's difficult to be certain. What was the great sin that brought about the plague? It's never specified. But the people, as well as the priests, are called to answer for it. As in the case of Haggai, Joel's admonitions are taken to heart, and we are told that whatever the locusts ate will be restored. Jolly good, don't you think? The prophet goes on to issue another powerful oracle. V'haya achrei chen eshpoch et ruchi al kol basar, v'nib'u banechem uvanotechem, ziknechem chalomot yechalamun, bachurechem chezionot yir'u. Not surprisingly, the prophet Joel meets with denigration at the hands of many modern critics. He's accused of being part of the particularistic cult. James Crenshaw declares that Joel's xenophobia is closest to Haggai, Zechariah, Obadiah, and farthest from the universalist Jonah. It's been observed that if a prophet can be viewed by modern critics as building a bridge to Christianity or rising above Israelite xenophobia, he's well thought of. Otherwise, he's denigrated as religiously and morally retrograde. It's worth pointing out, however, that while Joel delivers a sermon on the practice of fasting, which is part of Jewish ritual life, it's declared useless unless accompanied by active concern for others, especially widows, orphans, resident aliens, and the poor. Perhaps then, social justice, far from being unlinked to religion and ritual, is indeed said to flow directly from Jewish ethical monotheism. Chapters 7 and 8 envision a new future when the curse will be transformed to a blessing. Jerusalem's population will overflow, and the city and the temple will be given a new name. As with Haggai, the turning point will be the foundation stone of the temple. In all of this, we see the role of the Israelite prophet evolving even as the office of prophet is about to disappear from the landscape of ancient Israel. But the role played by these prophets as history's earliest social justice warriors was destined to change the shape of all human society in the centuries to come. Many other cultures would emulate the welfare system created by ancient Jewish society, in keeping with the values of ethical monotheism and social justice. And the rest is history.